What would you do if the poor old gatekeeper standing at the entrance turned out to be a billionaire testing your true character? In today's emotional story, a billionaire father disguises himself as a poor gatekeeper to secretly test his son's fiancée before the wedding. What he witnesses changes his heart forever and leaves him in tears. This powerful story reminds us that true wealth isn't measured by money, it's measured by kindness, humility, and compassion. If you enjoy inspiring stories with unforgettable twists, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Emily Carter stepped out of her car and paused for a moment to admire the sprawling Harrison estate just outside Boston, Massachusetts. The mansion stood like something from a magazine, surrounded by perfectly trimmed gardens, marble fountains, and towering iron gates that hinted at the incredible wealth of the Harrison family. In less than a month, she would become Ethan Harrison's wife, joining one of the most influential business families in America. While the luxurious surroundings impressed her, they didn't intimidate her. Emily had grown up in a middle-class household where kindness, honesty, and hard work mattered far more than expensive cars or designer clothes. Ethan often joked that the only person harder to impress than investors was his father, Richard Harrison, the billionaire founder of Harrison Technologies. Richard had built his empire from a tiny garage workshop into one of the nation's largest technology companies. Newspapers admired his business genius, but those who knew him personally described him as cautious, observant, and almost impossible to fool. He had watched too many people chase money instead of character, and after years of betrayal by business partners and even distant relatives, trusting anyone had become difficult. Although Ethan assured Emily that everything would be fine, Richard had already decided to answer one question before giving his full blessing to the marriage. Did Emily truly love his son nor the Harrison fortune? Instead of hiring private investigators or questioning her directly, Richard designed a test no one would suspect. He quietly informed only his personal attorney and his longtime head of security about his unusual plan. The following week, he disappeared from public view. His perfectly tailored suits were replaced with faded work clothes. His expensive watch remained locked away in a safe. A gray wig, rough beard, and worn boots completed the transformation. Even his confident posture changed as he practiced walking with slightly bent shoulders and slower steps. Within days, the billionaire had become Mr. Ben, an elderly temporary gatekeeper assigned to the estate while the regular security employees supposedly recovered from surgery. The makeup artist Richard occasionally hired for corporate advertisements helped make the disguise nearly impossible to recognize. Even senior employees who had worked beside him for years walked past him without a second glance. The wedding preparations soon filled the estate with activity. Delivery trucks arrived carrying fresh flowers, expensive furniture, crystal chandeliers, and decorations imported from Europe. Wedding planners rushed through the property with clipboards, giving instructions to caterers, photographers, musicians, and designers. Luxury vehicles rolled through the gates from sunrise until evening, bringing celebrities, politicians, executives, and family friends eager to attend. What many newspapers had already called the society wedding of the year. From his small security booth near the entrance, Richard watched every interaction carefully. Many guests barely acknowledged him. Some threw invitation cards toward his desk without making eye contact. Others complained that he inspected vehicles too slowly, speaking to him with impatience or irritation. A wealthy businessman even muttered, "Why would they hire someone this old?" loud enough for Richard to hear. Richard never responded. He simply nodded politely, opened the gate, and made quiet notes in a small notebook hidden beneath the desk. Then Emily arrived. The first morning she noticed the elderly gatekeeper standing beside the entrance. She rolled down her window before he could even greet her. "Good morning," she said with a bright smile. "I'm Emily. I don't think we've met before." Richard lowered his head slightly, pretending to be shy. "My name is Ben, ma'am. I'm only filling in for a little while." "Well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Ben." Those simple words surprised him more than he expected. Most people never asked his name. Over the following days, Emily greeted him every single time she entered or left the estate. She remembered his name without hesitation and often asked whether he had eaten lunch, or if he needed anything from the nearby grocery store. Their conversations were never long, but they were genuine. She treated him exactly the way she treated the wedding planner, the gardeners, and Ethan's executive assistants with equal respect. One chilly afternoon, heavy rain swept across the estate. Richard sat alone inside the tiny security booth, quietly coughing while trying to finish a dry sandwich he had packed as part of his disguise. The roof leaked slightly, and cold wind slipped through the old window frame. A few minutes later, Emily's car stopped unexpectedly at the gate. She stepped out despite the rain, carrying a small paper bag and a steaming cup. "I noticed you were coughing yesterday," she said softly. "I made homemade chicken soup this morning. I hope you don't mind." Richard looked at her in stunned silence. "You didn't have to do this. My mother always said no one should work in the rain on an empty stomach." handed him the warm soup along with fresh bread and fruit before noticing that his umbrella was broken. Without thinking twice, she offered him her own umbrella. "You'll need this more than I do." Richard shook his head immediately. "No, miss, you'll get soaked." Emily laughed gently. "I'll only be outside for a minute. Besides, you're the one standing here all day." Before he could refuse again, she placed the umbrella beside him and hurried toward the mansion through the falling rain. Richard remained frozen inside the security booth, staring at the untouched soup in his hands. During decades of running billion-dollar companies, people had bought him expensive gifts, praised him in public, and competed for his approval. Yet none of those gestures had ever felt as sincere as one young woman giving up her own umbrella to someone she believed was nothing more than a poor old gatekeeper. For the first time since beginning his secret test, Richard felt his carefully built walls begin to crack. Hidden beneath the disguise, his eyes became slightly watery as he quietly whispered to himself, "Maybe, just maybe, my son chose with his heart better than I ever imagined." Seats than noticing the old man, who had opened the gates for them every day. Emily noticed him immediately. Before walking toward the bridal suite, she crossed the driveway with her wedding dress carefully lifted above the ground. "Good morning, Mr. Ben," she said with the same warm smile she had worn since the day they first met. "You look beautiful today." Richard smiled softly. "Thank you, my dear." She handed him a neatly wrapped gift. "I wanted you to have this." He looked surprised. "For me?" Emily nodded. "I know you'll probably never wear it while working here, but I thought every gentleman deserves something nice." Inside the small box was a brand new wristwatch. It wasn't the most expensive watch in the world, but it had been carefully engraved on the back. Asterisk, asterisk. Kindness is the greatest wealth. Asterisk, asterisk. Richard stared at the words for several seconds, unable to speak, though no one had given him a gift chosen with such thought in many years. "You really shouldn't have spent your money on an old man like me," he whispered. Emily smiled gently. "My parents taught me that appreciation isn't measured by price, it's measured by gratitude." Richard carefully closed the box before quietly placing his hand over his heart. "Thank you." As Emily walked away toward the ceremony, Richard felt his eyes become heavy with emotion. Throughout his career, companies had presented him with gold watches, luxury cars, expensive paintings, and awards worth millions of dollars. Yet none of them meant as much as the simple gift now resting in his hands. A few hours later, guests gathered beneath a beautifully decorated outdoor pavilion overlooking the estate gardens. Ethan stood at the altar, smiling nervously as music filled the air. The ceremony began. Emily slowly walked down the aisle beside her father, wearing an elegant white gown that seemed to glow in the afternoon sunlight. Ethan's eyes filled with happiness the moment he saw her. Just as the officiant prepared to begin the vows, a voice interrupted from the back. "Excuse me." Every head turned. The elderly gatekeeper slowly walked down the center aisle. Several guests exchanged irritated looks. One wedding planner hurried forward. "Sir, this area is for family only." Before she could escort him away, Richard calmly removed his old cap. Then he reached up and pulled away. The gray wig, the fake beard followed. A stunned silence swept across the garden. Gasps echoed through the audience. Within seconds, everyone recognized the face hidden beneath the disguise. Richard Harrison, the billionaire, owner of Harrison Technologies. Several guests stood in complete disbelief. The impatient businessman who had shelved him lowered his head in shame. The wealthy woman who had insulted the catering assistant suddenly avoided eye contact. Even Ethan looked shocked. "Dad," Richard smiled at his son before turning toward